Are. Did everyone hear that that's recording? We're good. You can hear us, you can see us. Welcome, everyone, to Cook with Meg. This is our chef spotlight series. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Not on the spot, but she's literally in the spotlight right now. Our guest tonight is a giant Cook with Meg. Awesome. She holds her Bachelor of Science degree in home economics, specializing in food and nutrition. She is a cookbook author. She has been on TV for years. She is a recipe developer. She tests recipes and writes recipes for magazines, for cookbooks, for TV, for food companies, and so much more. And that is just scratching the surface. Please, I know your microphones are turned off, but give a big Cook with Meg. Welcome to Chef Emily Richards. Emily, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone tonight. Thanks for having me. And I am excited because I think I get to talk about cookbooks tonight.
You do, you do. And just so you have background, I know I told Emily a little bit about us, but the Cook with Meg community started in 2020. And Callum, to answer your question in the chat, we're not baking tonight, but Emily is going to be baking. And then as soon as this finishes, I will be sending you this recipe tonight that you all can make at home. And what's really cool about Emily is that you've really, I don't want to say like come up the ranks, but you've paid your dues. You've been in this business for a really long time and you have a really great story. So I want to just ask you right out of the gate, you've done it all, but can you take us back to your journey and food and nutrition and sort of tell us a little bit about how you came to be here today?
I would love to. It's a little bit maybe of a story that is not common. I started working in restaurants when I was in high school. I loved being in a kitchen and I needed a job. And I started working at in a golf course. So I was working in banquets, starting in service. And what was great about that was that I got to serve food and I got to see how people reacted when they got the food, which was always with a smile. They were super happy to see it. And I worked with a really nice chef, and I told him that I was interested in cooking, like being more a part of, the preparation. And so he kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. And it was fabulous because they were Polish and Hungarian. And so I was also experiencing a new culture. My background, my family's Italian. And so I grew up in an Italian household. So I had a lot of that under my belt. But, learning about different cultures and ethnicities, this was a great way for me to do that. And I loved food since I was little. I hung out with my grandmother all the time and I loved cooking with her. And I didn't have, any video games or anything like that. So we cooked, we made pasta, we made bread. So I kind of really grew up with my hands in a bowl. And which is why I'm making bread tonight because it really kind of brings me to the beginning for me and the love of cooking and baking. And so because of that, I knew I wanted to do something and get more knowledge. So I went to the University of Western Ontario to get my food nutrition degree. And I figured having that nutrition knowledge with my cooking knowledge would be really important. I continued working in restaurants, and I really wanted to open my own restaurant. I thought, this is it. I'm going to have nutrition information that I can share and create these beautiful menus that are healthy and feed people and make them happy. That kind of quickly changed when I realized how expensive having a restaurant is and the possibility of going bankrupt. So I was a little bit afraid of that. And I lucked out and I got a position at Canadian Living Magazine, which is a magazine that's still around. And I got a job as a summer student. So I was only supposed to be there for 3 months. And my job consisted of getting groceries, emptying the dishwasher, loading the dishwashers, setting up trays for recipes to be tested, and kind of just being around these amazing people that were creating recipes for Canadians for their home kitchens and writing cookbooks. So it really opened up my eyes to a whole new thing that I didn't have to necessarily be in a restaurant, but I could do something like this. And that 3 month job turned into an 8 year, almost 9 year career. So for me, it really kind of changed the direction of where I was going, and it was very, very fun along the way. Because I got to experience lots of things. One of them being food television. I hated talking in front of people, could not stand it. And now all of a sudden, people were asking me to cook in front of people and talk about the food that I was making. And I didn't like doing that in university. I didn't like doing those presentations, but it was part of the job. Everyone had to do it. And then we had to do it on television, which is even scarier because you have these big cameras in front of you and hot under the lights. And, am I sweating and am I talking and cooking at the same time? And so it was a lot of hands-on kind of experience that I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a fabulous time to be a part of the beginning of food television for Canada anyway.
I love that. And when you said under the lights and the sweating, it brought me back to when I was on MasterChef Canada, which I've shared a little bit about of. And I mean, there is nothing like it. Like, how are you expected to make blank when you can't even breathe? So I hear,
Yep.
I love that. And that's certainly where I knew you from, Canadian living. Talk to us a little bit about developing recipes or getting to the point where you say, I've developed enough recipes that I am going to write a cookbook. And I know we're going to dive into actual cooking, but if you could say in a nutshell, like how do we go from that to this?
So that was a little bit of luck. I'm going to start doing some things. So, and I will tell you what I'm doing as we go along.
Yes,
I like moving. I can't sit for very long.
you do
Um,
that.
so it kind of went a little bit. So being on television, you're exposed to a large audience, especially because our show was national, and working at the magazine was also very public. So you're always kind of out in the public eye. When I was going to the grocery store, people would ask me what to make for dinner, and they would come up to me and say, "Hi, Emily." And I would look at them like I was supposed to know who they, because normally if someone says hi to you and says your name, you kind of know who they are, right? You're not like just seeing strangers and they know your name. So I was looking at them thinking like, did we go to school together? What did we do together? Um, Not realizing that it's because they saw the show. And so they started asking me, what what to make for dinner and what was in my grocery cart, because that was very interesting to them, what was in my grocery cart.
I love
Um,
that. I love that. I just wanted to let everyone know here. Okay, good. I've removed myself from the spotlight. This is not about me. This is about Chef Emily. So Emily is cooking on my screen. She's at the top where we can see her, but she's also added a down shot where you can see right in her bowl. Give us a thumbs up if you guys have access to those. You can see them. I've put two spotlights on you, Emily. You will hear me. You probably won't see me because we just want to see you. So, over to you as far as what's happening right now. What are we doing tonight?
I'm activating some yeast.
Okay.
Yeast is alive. We're bringing it back to life. I love the science behind food, and that's one of the reasons why I went to school. That's why I wanted that food and nutrition degree because I really wanted to balance out my love of cooking and get that science, that food science background to go with it. So one of my favorite things is talking about yeast and how it, comes back to life. I'm using dried, active dry yeast, so traditional yeast. I did put a little bit of granulated sugar and some warm water. You kind of saw me standing there by the tap. I didn't boil the water. I didn't, heat it up. All I did was turn the tap on and get it hot, but not so hot that I couldn't keep my hand under it. I explain it as going in and taking a nice hot shower. That's the kind of water, that's the temperature I want to activate my yeast. And the sugar is the little bit of food that's going to eat, that the yeast is going to eat and just start to activate and froth up. So I'm just going to let this sit here while we chat for a bit because that's gonna happen. Um, but I do want to do a little reverse here. So this is just going to go over here for a second.
Okay. Okay. I love it.
So we are going to do a reverse. I'm going to kind of show you the end because then I want to bake it. And nothing to me is more comforting and amazing than some fresh baked bread. So this is what we're going to
Oh.
be making. We're going to get there. So this is risen shaped and risen for about an hour or so. It's really warm in my kitchen today, so things are happening a little bit faster. I have my oven on at 350 degrees, and I'm just going to brush these little braids, and I'm going to show you how to make the braids because they're my favorite. I'm just going to brush this with a little bit of an egg wash. So this is just an egg whisked up with a little bit of milk. You could use water. And then this is going to give it a nice kind of shiny glaze. And if you're wondering why I decided to make bread, it just reminds me of so many amazing people in my life that helped me get here, one of them being my grandmother. And this was um, a recipe that I spent a lot of time with her because she never measured anything. And so I really wanted people to know how amazing this bread was. And I needed to spend a lot of time with her to get the amounts and figure out what she was doing so that everyone could make and enjoy this bread. So I'm going to just pop this in the oven and put a timer on, and we're going to check it as our time is together here.
While Emily is doing that, I will let everyone know that this recipe is from one of her cookbooks. We will be sending you this recipe for Easter bread, and someone I believe at the end of tonight might be winning one of these cookbooks, perhaps.
You're right. So stick around.
Stick around. I also want to say, Emily, what was really funny when you and I chatted about how tonight was going to go, and you said, I think I'm going to make bread. And I said, now, would you need, I mean, my first go-to is, do we need a dough hook? Do they need a machine if they're making them? And you giggled and you said, oh, no, 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 no. We are hands in a bowl. So when you mentioned going in with hands, testing the water for the warmth for the yeast, it's giving me that you really cook intuitively and for people to embrace that maybe a little bit more than feeling like we need a lot of like tools and supplies and electric things.
Don't get me wrong. I love a gadget. I'm using one right now. Microplanes are fabulous. I love gadgets, but they don't always have to be kind of, the top of the line things. I have a stand mixer, but I use it when I'm making large quantity of things. And for some people, when you hear the amounts of everything, you might think that this is a large amount, which it can be. But I also find that things like this are relaxing and they bring me to a better place. So, because I'm thinking about right now, the aroma of this orange is amazing. So it's kind of filling the room and making me feel happy. Also, because you guys are all here tonight too, and I get to chat about all these, amazing things that have happened to me, but also the amazing people in my life. And so my grandmother isn't here anymore, but every time I make this bread, I feel like she's standing with me and she's kind of, helping me along. And I think that it's those types of things that, doing things with your hands and cooking, even if you're doing crafts or anything that involves that little bit of thought and movement with your hands, it really, really does bring you to a good place. And I think that is one of the reasons why I love cookbooks too, because they bring you to a place, a time in history. They can bring you to a different country. And I think that's what's so unique about them. I know a lot of people like to, just go online and look something up, but there's not really a connection with that sometimes. It's quick, it's easy. If you have some chicken, what am I going to do with it tonight? You can, search something and find something. But a cookbook you need to spend time with. You need to flip through it. You need to find what you're looking for. And then you're going to create it, maybe with, a family member or maybe with a friend. And I think that's what makes cookbooks so special. I had no idea that I was going to write cookbooks. Not a clue. I loved cookbooks. I always have, but I never thought that I would get to a point where cookbooks would be so meaningful in my life. And hopefully they become meaningful for other people that then get to use them and they become part of their family, if
Now,
that makes sense.
it does. It absolutely makes sense. Now, on the theme of cookbooks, which is kind of our theme for tonight's chat, I'm holding, which I see in front of you. You've got Best of Bridge. You also have Per Familia, which is yours. So tell us, in your own opinion, how different is it to be a part of a series, a book series that has been around for, I think you said we're celebrating 50 years for Best of Bridge this year, to then writing your own cookbook. Like, how different are those experiences from from a writer's standpoint?
Well, that's a great question because I feel like I almost did a full circle. I started at Canadian Living, and that's really where I learned the cookbook writing part of it. And I was part of a team helping put together these cookbooks. And one of the classics in the year 2000, we had the Canadian Living Cookbook come out. It was a bestseller. It won some cookbook awards and literary awards. And I was part of that team to help promote it, to help put it together and kind of see the process. Not so much hands-on in, the editorial and things like that, but definitely seeing what was going on. And being a part of that, you had a sense of ownership as well, because it wasn't just the test kitchen recipes that were going in there, it was some of our recipes. So we had recipes that were our names were going to appear with those recipes, which is a big thing because I've developed recipes for a lot of companies and magazines, but you would never know that they're mine unless
Right,
I told you because
right.
my name doesn't appear there. So that was kind of the first step of being kind of a part of a team or a brand, because Canadian Living definitely was a brand. And then what ended up happening was when I left the test kitchen, I got an offer from a book publisher to write my own cookbook. And they said, "What would you like to write about?" And I said, "I would love to write about what I know, and that is Italian cooking. I grew up with in an Italian family, and I that's what I think I would, succeed at." So they said, "Let's do it." So I'm going to show you that book because I have it right here. This one isn't in print anymore,
Okay.
but this is my first by myself cookbook.
Love
It's
it.
so this was it's called Italian Express, and this is fast and easy family favorite. So there's no desserts in here. This is all get dinner on the table, and they were all recipes or influenced by recipes that my grandmother and my mother made, and I grew up eating. And it was fabulous. It was super fun. And so I thought, wow, I can even do this by myself, but by myself in a certain way. You have editors, you have photographers, you have food stylists. Still a team that you're working with, except you're the one now responsible for all the recipes, all the editorial. And in that book, I even got nutritionals done because I thought it was something that was really important. So that was really the learning experience for me for writing my own cookbook.
Hmm.
And so from there, I did a few more. I did a self-published book. I did a book for childcare cooks, and I helped edit that book as well as food styled it. And so again, like everything was building on that initial experience, things that I didn't know I could do, but I just kept saying yes to because I thought, well, I can't really be that bad at it. If I don't know how to do it, I'll ask questions and figure it out. I love cooking. So why can't I make the food look good for a photo?
Yeah.
So it kind of just, led into that. And then Per La Familia it's 10 years old this year. It's celebrating an anniversary too.
Yay!
And so that one was really a little bit more of a labor of love. It took probably about 3 years to come to be because I researched it. There was a lot of family recipes that I had to work on, like this egg and raisin bread. I had to make it a lot with my grandmother because she literally would take that 20-pound bag, the 10-kilo bag of flour, dump it on the dining room table, and just add everything. And I was like, no one's gonna, she made bread for us, the neighbors, people down the street and, family, which was fabulous because people would be coming to the house all the time to get the bread and other things. She'd made pizza the same way. And so I was like, I don't think everyone's going to want to make that many loaves of bread. So I had to work with that amount and, whittle it down so that it was a little bit more approachable, but still enough that you could make and share. Because really, I think it's fabulous to be able to share food,
Yes.
whether you're sitting at a table with, your family and friends, eating the same food, or making something to drop off to a neighbor, or freeze it so that you can bring it, for a special occasion or a potluck or something like that. So that was really a lot of work for recipe development, and getting stories. So if you flip through the book, there's a lot of family photos in there too of times when we were in Italy, when my family was in Italy, when we were celebrating things, because that was just what we did. That's kind of what we do. That's part of our life. And I wanted to let people in and let them experience that and create the recipes as well at home. So from there, there was a little bit of a break. And then in 2017, I was asked if I'd like to be a part of Best of Bridge. And I was like, for real? Like I was already part of a great Canadian brand once in my life. How can I, get the opportunity to do it twice? And I was like, for sure, this is amazing. So I actually got to meet one of the original Best of Bridge ladies. She still lives in Calgary. And it was amazing just to kind of, and not, and the thing you have to understand here is Best of Bridge is known very well in certain provinces, but not across all the country. So for me, I was terrified because I said, I'm not from Alberta. How are people going to react? But I had been coming to Alberta for, well, by that time, almost 20 years, to participate in events in Alberta. And I had lots of friends there. And I just, I was coming at least twice a year, if not more. I had done Stampede. So to me, it felt like just a natural part of who I was to do something based in Alberta. And so I didn't have to do it alone, though. This was the great part because, much like Best of Bridge, it was part of a group, originally 7 women that whittled down a little bit less over the years. And I got to work with a dear friend of mine, Sylvia Kong, who lives in Calgary. And that's what Best of Bridge is about, working with your friends, having fun with your friends, creating these beautiful dishes. And so now a little of the load came off because I knew I wasn't going to have to do this alone. And working with a friend in this type of an environment, so with cookbooks and food, it just made our friendship even stronger. And we both love food. We both love cooking. Her family's Chinese, my family's Italian. So we
Love
were a
it.
great mix.
Love it. I love it. Well, now as you're a beautiful storyteller, we're watching sugar and I saw some orange zest and now we've
Yes.
got eggs happening.
Yes. So this is going to be our sweet because this is a sweet bread. So it
Okay.
does have a little bit of sweetness to it. And the eggs are going to add a little bit of body to it, a little bit of color, and the orange. You could use lemon if you wanted to.
Mhm.
It's kind of classic for us to use orange. We love that citrus, but you could also even just add a little bit of vanilla or one of my favorites, not everybody likes it, is anise extract.
Ooh, yep.
Um, it's that little bit of licorice flavor and
Mhm.
I absolutely adore it.
And I saw that
But
you did zest of the whole orange, it looked like, right? So it's a
yes,
good amount
yes,
of orange.
it is. It ends up being, I think, about a tablespoon in total. So if you have a nice big orange, I had a beautiful big orange there, you'll usually get about a tablespoon. And then this is going to add kind of the richness along with the eggs is a little bit of melted butter. I
Yeah.
say a little bit because you can make 4 to 6 loaves with this. Okay.
Okay.
So don't feel that sometimes sometimes when people look at the amounts of things, they kind of freak out. Don't freak out. This is a really nice bread.
Right.
All right, there. So I'm going to bring back our yeast
Okay.
because it is perfect for us to use now.
Ooh.
It's nice and frothy. And then I'm going to add 1 cup of milk. So if you're thinking, wow, this sounds like everything I have for breakfast, this is a great breakfast bread, just so you know. I love it toasted with a little bit of butter and jam. It
Mm.
makes great French toast.
Oh, that would be delicious.
It makes great grilled cheese too.
Ooh, you've got the savory with the sweet.
Yep, it
We
does
like
have that
that.
there.
Many of
And
our
then,
many of our families who are here tonight are part of our Culinary Explorers program. And one lesson that we took with them that we went through was talking about all of the different flavors. And so from salty and sweet and umami, and they're all the experts now. So, what flavor pairings and combos can we go through? And part of their final project is to create an original recipe. So, you might be inspiring some original recipe creations here tonight.
perfect. Yes, no, I think that's fabulous. And I think one of the great things about writing cookbooks is the time you get to spend in the kitchen creating. And sometimes, you might think, oh, this might be a little bit weird, but I go ahead and try it because you'll be surprised. Some of the things that go together, and if you look through recipes, you'll see you think, why did they do that? But then when you taste it, it's amazing. Like it just kind of
Mhm.
hits you and you think, why didn't I think of that? I
Yeah.
do that often.
I do too. I do too. I want to let everyone know who's watching because we asked you guys to bring some questions. I certainly have some with me. Type your questions if you want into the chat. And then as Emily is putting together the bread, we'll certainly get to your questions. We also at the end will get mics turned on if you want to physically ask her a question. But don't be shy. Type those into the chat, and we have her here to pick her beautiful brain. That looks good.
So I'm just using, this is all-purpose flour. And you can use, I have made it with gluten-free flour. It doesn't come out as fluffy, but it does work.
Ooh.
And if you are interested, I should have sent you this one too, Meg, but
Mm.
I have a no yeast version of this too.
Ooh.
So if you want it more like a quick bread so that you don't have time to let it rest, I have, it's the same flavor, it just doesn't have the yeast in it.
Oh, that's
So
okay.
that's kind of, I know sometimes people are looking for that, a little bit of a faster sweet
Hmm.
bread.
Love
So I'm
it.
just going to add a little bit more flour here. And this is, so in the recipes, you'll find things like when recipes are being developed, especially with flour, it says approximately. So
Mhm.
in this recipe, it says approximately 5 cups of flour, but you may need to add a cup or a cup and a half more just based on where you are in Canada and what kind of flour that you're using. So believe it or not, it does make a difference. So I always like to start with the minimum and then add the flour as I go. Okay. I just kind of spun the pan around. My oven is not very even, so I always like to spin it around to make sure that the bread kind of cooks evenly, but it's
I
getting
like
nice and golden.
I like that you said the thing about the approximate, and that is something that as at Cook with Meg, when I write my recipes, it is one of the toughest things where oftentimes you'll have to approximate measurements for flour if you're doing something like a bread. And then to that note, oven time and temperature. Temperature you're usually okay with, but do you find
Yeah.
timing of things depending where we live in Alberta, right? We're at higher altitude. You're in Ontario. It's a bit different. So what advice do you give cooks when you're teaching or sharing so that someone who might not be as comfortable in the kitchen to go with it? How do you make them feel a little more comfortable knowing that it can be so varied?
You should, there's a couple things. So usually when you're looking at a recipe, they'll give you 2 degrees of doneness. One is typically a time, and one is the degree of doneness. So what that means is it if it's golden, if it's a cake, does it spring back or the tester comes out clean? And what you can do when it comes to baking, it's a little bit more fine-tuned, right? Because you really want to look for the degree of doneness for a cake. You don't want it to just be golden on top and then you take it out and it falls in because the center wasn't cooked through. And so you really need to have both of those things in order. And over time, this is something that you learn. It's kind of a learned behavior in the kitchen. So if you're always making the same cake, you'll kind of know, you'll get to know things. Where it changes, if what if all of a sudden you have to make that cake at someone else's house?
Mhm.
But you need to remember, I checked it for doneness. I put a skewer in, or I put a cake tester or toothpick in. So I know that it might take 5 minutes more, 5 minutes less. I always recommend to check things a little bit ahead of time and not just wait till the end because somebody's oven could be a little bit hotter than yours at home.
I
So
always say
things can
that.
things can vary. But when it comes to cooking, you're a little bit more in control because oftentimes when we're cooking, especially stovetop, we can see everything change. Like proteins, for example, they're a great way to show examples of how things cook because they typically cook from the outside and go in, right? So if you look at a chicken breast or a piece of fish, it's cooking on the outside, then it's starting to cook in. You turn it over and it's going to do the same. But is it done? You don't know. Thermometers are key for those types of things. Or in the case of fish, you can do an estimate for every inch of thickness. It takes about 10 minutes. And you can always use a little fork to give it a little twist to see if it flakes, depending on the fish that you're using. So these are things that you just kind of try to stay in tune with as you're cooking or baking so that then you don't feel that stress. Like I'm not really stressing about that bread. I added another 5 minutes because I think it's going to need another 5 minutes. But if it needs another 2 minutes after that, I'm okay with that. So I try not to stress about it. And I think once you remove that, like take off the stress jacket
Yes.
and relax a little bit, I think that you'll enjoy cooking more if you're not enjoying it already. If you're enjoying it already, then play around, have some fun, and take notes, especially if you want to write your own cookbook. Take notes.
That's a great, great bit of advice. Now, I promise I will ask every one of the questions that you guys have typed. But on that note, Samuel said, Emily, how do you know where, he didn't say Emily, I'm saying Emily. How do you know where to start when you are developing a brand new recipe? Where do you start?
That's a great question. You know where you start? You start with inspiration. So it could be you saw something in a magazine or you saw something online, you tasted something at a restaurant, and you liked either the flavors or you liked what it was, and you need to kind of take notes. I'd like to say that you're going to remember everything, but it's good to, even if, if you have a phone or if you have a little piece of paper, napkins. I can't tell you how many things I've written on napkins. I take them home and I type it into the computer to revisit. Or I'll type it into my phone in notes and then revisit it. I even told my kids to do that because when they experience things, I want to know because then maybe I can recreate it as well.
I
So
love.
that's really the first part. And then kind of if you are basing it on something else. So let's say I'm going to use something simple like mac and cheese. Okay. You had a great mac and cheese. You're trying to figure out, oh, I think it was a different cheese that they used. Maybe it was multiple cheeses. You can always ask questions, especially if you're at a restaurant.
I love
Um,
that.
you can ask questions and just say, like, I really loved the recipe that I had at your restaurant. Would you share the recipe? If they don't want to share the recipe, ask them to share a few ingredients that were in the recipe because maybe that's the key that you need. Maybe that mac and cheese that you thought maybe just had cheddar actually has a little bit of Gruyere and mozzarella in it too to make it a little bit more stringy. So having those little pieces of information will help you create your recipe at home. And how you can create it and make it your own is the amounts and the different things that you're using. So let's say their macaroni and cheese was boring with macaroni, but you're going to use rotini and you're going to use, instead of more cheddar cheese, you really like that Gruyere cheese. So you're going to change the amounts there. And you want it really rich and decadent. I'm not going to use milk. Why don't I use a little bit of cream? And I love garlic. So why not add a little touch of garlic? And as you're thinking this, write it down. This is one thing I learned when I started working at Canadian Living is to go into the kitchen with a written recipe. Everyone, I know there's a lot of people that go in there and they throw stuff together and they're like, I'm going to remember what I did. You're not going to remember what you did. You're not going to, you might remember like kind of the main ingredients, but you might not remember that you used 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And next time you're going to add four and think, oh, what did I do wrong? So if you go into the kitchen with a written recipe, you can still take notes if you're going to change anything or add anything, but you have something concrete already. It could be written, it could be typed up, but you have a starting point that then you can go in and fix up. Then, when someone says, you know what, when you made that mac and cheese, I loved, there was a little bit of a flavor in there that wasn't quite sure. And you can say, well, you know what, I added soy sauce because I thought that that would balance out the flavor. And all of a sudden, they're going to ask you for that recipe, and you'll actually have a recipe to share.
Mhm.
I
Love.
hope that answered the question, or
It
maybe it was.
abs No, it absolutely did. We're all right. We're all taking notes here. I love this. And this is recorded. Check us in with what's happening with your bread dough. And then I have so many questions for you. So what's happening with the bread dough right now?
Okay, so I added the flour and salt. I did add some salt. Sometimes people ask about salt in sweet things, and that just really helps bring out the flavor of everything else. And so the salt goes in with the flour, and then now And then I added raisins. I kind of snuck those raisins in there if you didn't see if you didn't see that. But what I did do first, if you saw me go over to the sink, I actually soaked them in some hot water before I added them. And the reason I did that was because raisins can, I'm not saying that everybody has old raisins, but sometimes they've been around the cupboard for just a little while and they're not as plump as you'd like them to be. So just soaking them in a little bit of hot water will revive them. Okay. So once they've soaked, and you can do that, like I soaked them just before we got on, so it can be done ahead of time. And then just squeeze out the water because you don't want to add more liquid to the bread dough itself. Okay. So that's in here too. And for those of you that don't like raisins, you don't have to, my sister doesn't like raisins, but I still make her eat them. Um, she picks them out. So
I
you can
love
let
it.
people pick out the raisins, or you can leave the raisins out. But I know my grandmother would prefer if I left them in. So that's what I'm doing. I left them in. Okay.
I love that.
Um, and then now we're just gonna knead this a little bit. So I'm just adding a little bit more flour. It's not a stiff dough. It's nice and kind of soft. If it's still too sticky at this point, just start sprinkling flour all over it. Okay. Um, and then I'm just kneading it. I'm doing quarter turns and I'm using kind of the base of my hand to push it out. Okay. So as I'm doing this, I'm not, I know a lot of people like to do this. They go in and start squeezing it like this with their hands. I don't want you to do that because you're going to have to add way more flour to the bread because you're making it kind of wet and sticky again. So this way, just by turning it this quarter turn, you can flip it over and then just turning it like this. And what we're looking to do is get a fairly kind of smooth dough that's soft when you give it a poke and then it kind of springs back a little bit. And so this is my relaxing part here. So this is where if you wanted to put it in a machine, you totally could, but it doesn't take that long, really.
I love it. I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Um, how do you what's an idea? You might want to think about this one. What's an idea that you had for a recipe that seemed crazy, Mariah said, but actually really worked? Does
I
anything
do
come
have
to
to
mind?
I do have to think about that
Just
one,
think
but
about that.
there are a few things that over time I think they've become popular. Like I remember the first time, and this was a long time ago, where I had to do a story for, we have a magazine here in Ontario called Food and Drink, and they wanted me to do a leftover story. So using like turkey leftovers after Thanksgiving and Christmas and things like that. So I was like, oh, I should try to do something. This was a long time ago, and I had never really seen kind of curry or mango chutney and things like that used with turkey. And so I was like, well, I don't want to make a curry because then that's kind of an obvious, but what if I used some curry and mango chutney, but added some tomatoes and
Mm.
made like a pasta with it?
Ooh.
And I was like, in your head, you're like, I don't know that this is going to work. Um, but I made it. I had to, play around with it a little bit, but eventually balanced out the flavor because I really wanted that little bit of kind of spice from the curry and the acidity from the tomatoes balanced out that. But then I needed a little bit of sweet. So the mango chutney came into play there. And then I added some raisins to it and almonds. And it was
Yum.
quite a unique little recipe. And years later, I have friends that still tell me that they use it. And I couldn't even tell you what year it was that it came out, but um, they were, it was just something that was not in my wheelhouse at all. Like I would have
No.
never thought, but I was just, sometimes you try to think outside the box. It doesn't always work.
Hmm.
Just FYI, it doesn't always work. But then
Um,
sometimes there's things that you think are going to work that just take a little bit longer to work.
I
I'm
love
gonna
that.
I'm gonna give you an example, lemon poppy seed cake.
Oh,
Prob Probably everyone's maybe made some version of something like that, right? The version I had to make many, many times to get it to work because there's a level of acidity that comes from a lemon. You have to balance the sweetness. And this particular case, I had to make it this big.
whoa.
So I had to really play around with the leaveners, like how much baking soda, how much baking powder, and then did it fall out of the pan? Like, did it? So there's other things sometimes that you have to consider.
Kylie is, I'm not sure what you're having as a snack, but do you want to turn your mic on and ask your question directly? Kylie's not shy. She'll ask her question.
I did type one in the chat earlier, but I'm just gonna go with a question that I've had for bedtime. That's a big one. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to maybe eventually start her own cookbook and possibly open up her own bakery someday?
Ooh, I love that question. And I think anyone could write a cookbook. Okay, you can quote me on that. I think everyone should write a cookbook. I think that there's different forms of cookbooks that everyone can write. And what I mean by that is they are cookbooks that you're going to share with family and friends. There's cookbooks that will go out to help raise money for a community event. There's church cookbooks. There are cookbooks for schools and fundraisers. And then there's cookbooks that get published and kind of put out into the world. So I think everyone can do any kind of those books. You have to work hard, but you can also start with something small and then move your way up. So I think doing those smaller cookbooks, even just going to a local print shop. So you're, typing up the recipes and then you're going to put it together. It could be in a little ring binder or anything like that and kind of start your way. I think you need to keep track of those recipes somehow. So if you're putting them into a computer, or what a lot of people are doing is also using social media for that. So they are doing recipes, taking pictures, and they're posting them, but they're also putting the recipes with the photo, which is a great way to remember them, by the way, because sometimes years later you look at it written and you're thinking, I don't remember what it looks like. So taking a picture of it really, really helps because then you think, oh, it didn't have enough color. Maybe I should add some red and yellow pepper to it to make it look a little bit more vibrant. So there's those types of things to look at. And for a bakery, well, I would highly recommend going to culinary school. And I know that there's some great ones in Alberta. And honing your skills. And you can actually start at various ages helping out at events. You can, if
Kylie lives
you
in Toronto. Kylie's in Toronto.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
even that's great. So George Brown, I'm going there Thursday night. Um, they have a great program there, and one of their pastry chefs, Stephen Song. He's fabulous. He teaches bread baking as one as one of the courses. So I think getting inspired and cooking with someone. So if you're starting now at home cooking, and then eventually if you want to get a part-time job and at a bake shop, even a restaurant, because there are some restaurants that you kind of need to learn the ropes. And by that, I mean, I didn't start cooking in a restaurant like on the line. I started, in banquets. I had to do dishes, and it's good to kind of know the whole aspect of things. And also, some will say pay your dues because that makes you more respected and also it kind of shows you how progression happens. And then I think it gives you more respect for everybody in the pastry shop or the kitchen or in the restaurant that you're working because everybody is valuable. And without all these members, you can't kind of reach the goals that you're looking for. And I think the other thing that's fabulous about it is while you're working, you can watch what's going on and you can ask questions. You can find out, does the what the owners have to pay, those types of things, how much does it cost to have a brick and mortar store? There's a lot of stores that are no longer brick and mortar. They do deliveries and things like that. So, what kind of pastry shop are you looking for? And being in a community who loves food is another great way to be able to ask questions. So that's really, really important. And
Kylie and her brother did, and I don't know if they still do it, and I think they called themselves the Baking Buddies. They used to bake and then sell to their community and their neighbors, and they'd raise money for stuff and sell their baked goods. And yeah, little entrepreneurs over here.
that's awesome. So you're already on your way. That's fabulous.
I love it. Sandy wanted to know, and I'll just quickly go through a couple of these. Did you use salted butter, Emily, in that recipe that in this recipe?
Yes. So I did use salted butter. And here's something for recipe development and cookbooks in general, in North America specifically. When the recipe calls for butter, it's always salted.
Hmm.
So unless it's specified, the book is always using salted butter.
Okay.
So if you're using, let's say, a baking book or a pastry book, you'll definitely see a lot more unsalted butter than just butter.
Hmm.
But in all the Best of Bridge books and my cookbooks and Canadian Living cookbooks, we always used butter, which meant salted butter. And
Okay.
one of the reasons why is because that's kind of the most common butter that most Canadians have in their refrigerator. It preserves, the salt preserves the butter, so it's able to last longer. So if you are kind of, when butter goes on sale, I'll admit I buy it and I freeze it. In particular, if it's unsalted, definitely freeze it because it doesn't have the salt in it to help preserve it. So if you've ever used unsalted butter and you start to see it kind of gets a little darker on the outside, it happens a bit quicker just because it doesn't have the salt to help preserve it for a long period of time. It's
Okay.
still good. It just kind of creates that darker yellow crust. That's all.
Now we'll look to you. I feel like we're moving to a next step. Lise wanted you to know she said, I have food and drink, so she's familiar with that. And also, Sandy said, I have seen Emily many times when she demonstrated at Jasper Park Lodge at Christmas in November. She always worked with Elizabeth Baird. They're a great team.
I will see Elizabeth on Thursday. So if you have any messages for her, let me know.
Oh,
I will
I
pass them
love
along.
that. I
And I'm
love
actually
that.
wearing, this is my Christmas in November 30th anniversary
Wow.
apron.
I
It's very
love that.
comfortable.
Kaylee and Callum asking you two questions that come back to Italian heritage. Number one, do you always make your own pasta or do you eat box pasta? That's from Kaylee. And Callum says, how many types of noodles are there? Oh, Emily, here
Oh,
we
oh boy. So there is an unlimited amount of noodles because you know what? Everybody at home creates kind of their own noodle that you don't even know about. And you can create your own noodle. If you make your own pasta, I guarantee you there will be a shape that you make that probably does not exist.
I love it.
There's posters with beautiful pictures of pasta shapes that I adore. There's even more than that. So I would say easily hundreds of pasta shapes. They're also very unique throughout Italy. So if you're in the south of Italy, the pasta shapes are going to be different from northern Italy. And that's just because of the sauces that they make, the flours that they use. And really, in all honesty, some of them are mistakes.
I love
Just
that.
a lot of great things happen from a mistake. They rolled it the wrong way. It looked really cool. So they just kind of went ahead and, they cooked it. No one's going to waste anything. It's still great. And yes, I do use boxed pasta. I there's some dried pastas that I absolutely love that I keep trying to make the shapes of, but I haven't created that expertise yet. My grandmother was fabulous at making pasta, and I try to emulate her a lot of the times. And so it's just easier to find them dried and boil them. They are traditionally Southern Italian pastas that I'm looking for. So they have really cool names like filet and trophy, and another one is macaroni. And so they're kind of thicker, rougher pasta, and I have not successfully created them and dried them um, to keep them around. And sometimes when they're fresh, they're flimsy, so they don't have the stability as they would when they're dried. And also, I have a godson who is gluten-free, so I often pick up gluten-free pasta when he comes over so that we can all have the same meal because he loves pasta. So
That.
box pasta is definitely a staple in this house.
I love that. I love that. I know that we're coming up here to about 10, maybe we could stretch it to 15 more minutes remaining before you show us the next step. On the pasta front, when you make your own homemade pasta, I know that oftentimes it'll say egg yolks and flour, and
Yep.
that's it. And literally that's it. But and that is something that I actually made that for my MasterChef audition, and I made ravioli, and it worked. It was fine. But is it true? Do you ever have to add anything but egg yolks to the flour? I know sometimes some people add a little oil or they add a tiny bit of water, but I cannot, for the life of me, and I'm a professional cook, I can't make it without those couple of extra things in Alberta. Is it because the
Uh,
climate?
the climate does, and the flour,
Mm,
right? So, if you, there is a thing, it's true, terroir plays a role in a lot of our lives. So, where the wheat was grown for the flour, like my flour is different than your flour. Certainly, if you go to Europe, the flour is different, and you
right.
can purchase, softer flours and things like that. But somebody might be using a different size egg, right?
True,
I
true, true,
I
true.
tend to use, again, that's another kind of recipe, not requirement, but sometimes it's an unknown. Most recipes in North America, when it calls for an egg, even if it doesn't state it, it's a large egg,
Right.
right? So there's little things like that that kind of play a role. I do add a smidge of oil to my fresh pasta, egg pasta recipe. And I use whole eggs in mine, not
Mm.
just egg yolks. So I like the richness of the yolk, but I like to use the whole egg and
Okay.
just add the whole egg. So I usually do, I think it's 3 eggs. My fresh pasta recipe is in Per La Familia too.
Here we
I
go.
think it's 3 eggs to like 2 cups of flour or something like that. I
Okay.
can't remember. I didn't make it this week, so it's not fresh in my
I
head.
love that. So what are we now? How long did you need that beautiful bread dough for? 10?
Um, so yeah, well, however long we were
I
chatting there
know,
for a
right?
bit.
Yep.
It just needs to be nice and soft. So this is the dough that I needed. I put a little oil, just a neutral oil in the bowl and flipped it over. And now this is going to go and rest and rise till it's doubled. Usually takes an hour. If your kitchen's really hot, like mine, it might take even less. In the summertime, it definitely takes less time. In the winter, takes a little bit longer. Don't put it by an open window. Don't put it on top of a hot stove.
Hmm.
Don't put it in a warm oven. Just make sure it's not in a drafty place. Once it's doubled, you're going to take it and divide it. I'm using half of the dough here, so I'm going to make 2 loaves. And so I cut in half, and then I cut each half into 3 pieces. And I'm making kind of I just rolled out 3 pieces. And you notice I'm not handling the dough very much. I'm not adding flour at this point. You really don't need to because the dough's not sticky. Okay. So the dough shouldn't be sticky after that first rise. Okay. If it's still a little bit sticky, that's okay. You can just use a little bit of flour on your hands when you're working with the dough. And then you're just going to make a braid. So this is always the part that I think is fun because this is how you find out who knows how to braid and who doesn't. So you just kind of crisscross things. And then what I do on this end is I just go the opposite way like that.
Ooh.
Okay. And then what you can do, this is what we do at Easter. By the way, traditionally it's made at Easter, but I make this bread year round because it's so delicious. At Easter time, what we do is we take this braid and make a
Oh,
little
that's gorgeous.
crown, and then you can put an egg in the center and bake it because the egg cooks while the bread is baking, and then that's a perfect gift for a neighbor. And
Wait,
I actually take the egg and eat it with the sweet bread. Again, sweet and savory, it works, I promise.
now you said egg, and my brain went to Cadbury, like the mini eggs, the little chocolate mini eggs.
Oh, I
Could
haven't tried that, but I'm talking whole large egg.
Wow, I love it. Love it. I love it. While you're braiding the next one, Riley and Declan said, what was the first thing you learned to cook or bake? And how did it go on your first few tries?
So when I was little working with my grandmother, it was pasta and bread.
Mhm.
One of the first things that I made on my own because I wanted to cook for my grandfather. My grandmother always cooked for my grandfather. He came home for lunch from his job, and I would always be there with her, and we would make him lunch. So when I want to say maybe 7 or 8, she let me make something, and I decided I was going to make a chocolate cream pie. I did never made one in my life. My grandmother had never made one in her life, but I decided I heard kids talking about chocolate cream pie. So I decided to make it. And my went to the grocery store with my grandmother. We picked up a box. I think it was like a chocolate pudding mix. And I knew I had to make a pie crust, and my grandmother knew how to make pie crust. So I figured, we'll figure this out. The problem was I didn't know that the pie crust we were making was for more than one pie.
Oh my. Oh no.
So we we put all this pie dough in one pie. I think it was supposed to make like 3 pie shells, and it was made with lard, which makes excellent pastry.
Yep.
So that was the base. I also didn't know that I was supposed to bake it.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So I put the chocolate pudding in and then put it in the oven. Like that's how I thought it was supposed to be, right? So you're really supposed to par cook those crusts first
Oh
and
boy.
then fill them. So my grandfather was so happy because, I had made something, and, he was so proud of me that I made something, and he loved chocolate. So it was all good. And
Okay.
then what happened was when he bit into it, he just kind of, you know, started eating the chocolate pudding because that was okay. And then I tasted it and I was like, I made this face like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? It tasted like lard
Yep.
with chocolate. Like
And
it was
thick,
horrible
probably thick,
and
very
very
thick.
thick. It was not baked, and all I could taste was lard because it wasn't cooked, and there was way too much pastry in it.
Oh.
So,
But what
and
a
I don't think
wonderful
I've ever,
memory.
I don't think I've ever made a chocolate pudding pie in my life since.
But what a wonderful memory, right? Like we say these core memories that we have, whether it's something that we made with family, and that goes right back to your cookbook. It's just it's we all probably, every single one of us that's in this room tonight can probably think of a time when we cooked with somebody we loved, or we were in the kitchen. Maybe we weren't cooking, they were cooking with us or for us or teaching us. And it really is just such a connecting
It
experience.
is. It is. And to me, it's about having those food memories. I think that's what carries you over. I think it's about remembering people because long after those people are gone, the recipes are still here. So I always encourage young, old, however old you are, cooked, cooked, if you're an experienced cooked or not, to cook with someone, especially if you love their food. It could be a neighbor, it could be a friend that makes these awesome cookies. Cook with them. A lot of people have phones or computers around. Record yourself because
Mm,
that memory will live on. And you know what's awesome? To hear someone's voice telling you what's in that recipe. So I tried to record my
oh,
aunts, my grandmother,
that-
doing things. I didn't always have the voice, but seeing their hands, to me, it's about the hand movement and watching them move, just work with dough or roll a gnocchi or anything like that. It's just so meaningful. And then those memories come flooding back.
I
They're
love
not here, but those recipes still are. And I think that that's, again, what when cookbooks bring you to a different time and a place, it's really, really important.
I love that. Barb just said what great mentors your grandparents were. Love that. Helen, I've got your story here. Helen's watching. She said, I'm interested in listening to her experiences. The ladies involved in the cookbook series, The Best of Bridge. She said, I worked with Karen Brimacombe's mother. When the ladies got the first
Okay.
cookbook printed for sale, Verna's garage was the storage place for all those books. Of course, most of us at work all bought a copy. I still have it and use it, but not as frequently as I used to. Helen, did you want to turn your microphone on and say hello? You don't have to, but I'll just give you the cue there if you want to unmute.
I love that story.
I know. I know. I'll see if Helen can get. I love that too. I love that so many recipes have meaning to so many of us. No, I think we're having a bit of an issue. That's okay. She's got her
Oh,
book.
there it is.
There
There it
it
is.
is. The coiled book. I love it. Thank you, Helen. I
That's
love that.
awesome. And that's the era of the gingham aprons when all of them wore the gingham aprons and with the little frills. And I think that that's such an iconic shot
Oh, look at
when
that.
they took and we carried over that printing. So the same way those recipes, there they are.
There they are.
Um, and then they turned into a red and white gingham apron later on. And a great story. I'll make it quick. Was they actually went to the bank to get money to create the book because you needed money to print the book, and the bank said to they were seven ladies said, you can go home and get your husbands, and then we'll give you the loan. So that shows you the different time period that we were in. So
Oh boy.
they actually got money from a local realtor, from what I understand, to help them pay for the printing of that first cookbook, which I think is phenomenal. I think that that's kudos, to empowering women and business because they definitely started on the right path that way.
I love that. Well, I grew up in New Brunswick, and these barber cookbook
Oh
is
yeah.
a brand. It's a spice brand, and they've got the different editions. And again, it's an outstanding collection of favorite home recipes from the Atlantic provinces. And my grandmother's recipes are in some of these editions. And I'll tell you what, like it's just so, so special, isn't it?
It is. I think curling, I know a lot of people like to curl up with a good book. No one says that good book cannot be a cookbook because I think it's a great thing to curl up to and be inspired by. And you know what? You're planning your meals at the same time, and it's nice to kind of close your eyes at night and think of wonderful breads and so many other delicious things
I love
that
that.
you've come across in the cookbook.
Speaking of bread, this is a perfect way to wrap. We're going to give away a cookbook, but Emily, look at that.
So this is what we started off with. I put them in the oven so you can see they have a nice golden brown. The bottom's nice and golden brown. It's cooled
Beautiful.
off a bit now, so I can easily pick it up. And it cuts beautifully. And this freezes great too. So I did tell you that it cooks. It does bake 4 or 6 loaves, just depends on how big you want to make them. And they do freeze. So let them cool completely. And then my favorite is while it's still warm with a little bit of soft butter and a little cup of tea and a good cookbook.
This is absolutely amazing. Now I'm going to remove that spotlight. I'm going to put mine beside you. Here we go. This is the book. Per la Familia. And right here, there is her beautiful bread. Excuse me, but the one that you made tonight literally looks exactly like the one in the cookbook. So
So
you know she's made this a few times.
here's a little secret. I food styled that cookbook. So all those photos were done at my home, and I had my mom here, her neighbor, I had
Here's the egg.
friends. And we cooked those recipes, and the photographer came to my house and we shot everything here. So
Okay,
it was a
that's
full on,
amazing.
yeah, it was a full on hands on deck.
And
And I
there's
do
the
have
egg.
some soft butter that I'll
Oh,
be spreading on.
amazing, amazing. Oh, Helen said she can now talk to you. She's on. Helen, are you
Oh,
there?
awesome.
I finally got unmuted,
Here we go. Let's
Wonderful.
let's
but you already told her what I was going to say, so that's good.
I
Well, I
didn't want to
appreciate
knock
you
it.
sharing the story, Helen. I love hearing Best of Bridge stories because there's such a connection to family and friends. And I think that's so important. And it really showcases what Best of Bridge is and why it survived 50 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see they have a new cover. Is that the new version? Yeah.
Yes, the last two that we did. So in 2022, we did this one, Everyday Celebrations, and we actually got nominated for General Cookbooks of the Year. We didn't win, but it was an honor to be nominated. And then
Amazing.
in 2023, this book that Meg's holding up as well is done in one. So this is the new style of Best of Bridge. It's a little bit more of a modern look to it. It's a hardcover book. And so when you open it, there's way more photos in here than old Best of Bridge books. And we've kind of kept some of the signature look of Best of Bridge, but the printing is a little bit different. So we stepped away from the traditional handwriting look of the Best of Bridge recipes and kind of went a little bit more modern.
You still
Um,
have the jokes?
yes, there are still jokes. And Sylvia and I had lots of fun coming up with them. We really personalized the jokes in everyday celebrations, and then we went back to a little bit less personal because everyone kept saying, "Well, who's Emily and Sylvia?" So we had to go back to a little bit more general joke. But yes, the jokes are definitely still in there.
I love that. Thank you, Helen. Well, I also, Kylie had a question sort of just about the fusion of food between you and Sylvia with your different backgrounds. And so look at this, Kylie. This one looks like it could be up your alley. What are we? Tofu katsu sandwiches. That's kind of a fusion type something that we're working with, which that must have been fun to fuse your two
Yes,
cultures or
yes.
heritage in the world
Definitely.
of
And
cooking.
I think that's what makes working with a friend and having friends, from everywhere, different cultures and ethnicities, because then you can really kind of play around and have some fun and get inspired. And I think that's what's great, right? You get inspired by the people that are around you, and it just keeps you wanting to do more.
I love that so much. Now we have, um, you've graciously said that you would like to give away a cookbook. We could
Yes.
do the details of that, but I've got everyone's name all written down. And which book are you giving away?
Well, I don't know. Do you think we should do Per La Familia or should we do Best of Bridge? I feel like I talked a lot about Per La Familia, so I'm not sure,
I
but
don't know. You decide. Listen, you wrote them both, so which one do you want to give away?
well, I feel like done in one is more useful.
Okay.
Let's be honest.
Okay.
As much as I love Per La Familia, I think done in one is a very useful cookbook, and it's great because it's one pot, one pan, one sheet pan, less dishes, which everybody wants.
We love this. We
Yeah.
love this and we love you. And that's amazing. So, Emily, Chef Emily, please pick a number between 1 and 14.
I will pick, let's go 11.
Helen, you just won the best of bridge. Look at this. Literally, Helen, 11.
That's awesome. You don't have that copy, I hope, do you? Because that one's brand
She
spanking
does
new.
not. Oh, well, there you go. All these years later, you're going to grab a cookbook. This was really wonderful. Does anyone have any final questions or words? Oh, we've got a couple hands up. Jesky Crew, I haven't heard from you yet. So pop your mic on and ask Emily your question. Oh, oh, sorry. I muted you again. You can do that. Unmute yourself again, please.
Oh, I still can't hear you. You're muted still.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, Meg. Quick
Yeah.
question. You said that we get the recipe for the bread, correct? If I heard that?
Yes.
Sweet.
Sweet, you bet. I'm going to send that to you as soon as we finish. So that Easter egg and raisin bread recipe from this book is coming to your email inboxes. But you guys need to make a Cook with Meg promise, a pinky promise, that if you make this bread, you need to send us and tag all of us. So Emily gets to see your
Oh,
creation.
yeah.
Deal?
Deal.
Deal. All right.
I
Cal
felt that would be really mean of me not to give you guys the recipe after showing it to you, right? So I had to give you the recipe.
I love it. Callum, I see your hand is up and then I'll go to you, Kylie. Callum, what's your question, bud?
As he just stated that we will get the recipe. Do we get that one-page recipe or will we get the whole cookbook with it?
Yeah. You'll get
Good
the
question. It will be actually, I think it's longer than one page, unless Meg makes it one page. But I will tell you that if you really love the book, you can get it online. It's available on Amazon, and I'm hoping to come out west. So maybe I might be at a bookstore, and maybe we can cross paths or something.
Ooh,
I'm going to be in Toronto on Thursday at George Brown with that cookbook,
love.
making the cover recipe actually. So I try to still be out and about with the book and promote it because I got to celebrate it. It's 10 years old.
This is
It hit
very
double
exciting.
digits.
I love that. Kylie with a question or a comment.
Just want to say thank you so much. This presentation has been really fun. And also, Thursday is coming up, and maybe I could be there. Is it all ages, or is this thing at George Brown
Well,
all ages or something?
it's a ticketed event. I don't know that I don't think there's an age limit, but it's with the Junior League of Toronto. And we're celebrating Christine Cushing that night. So there's going to be some Food
Ooh.
Network folks, old Food Network folks, and Flavor Network people, and some great Toronto chefs. So if you Google Culinary Trailblazer, Junior
Mm.
League Toronto, you'll get the details. And I know they still have some tickets left. So
Ooh,
I'll be
maybe
there.
that's a family event. You'll have to look into it. Thank you, Kylie. All right, Ariana, we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up.
My dad comes from Italy, and we know a lot about it. I mean, a lot.
Her dad comes from Italy. Do you speak Italian? What can you say? Do you speak a
Like
little bit?
this much. I don't remember. My dad knows
What
this much.
what what part of Italy is your dad from?
Uh, his parents and he learned Italian, but he was born in Peru. But I know,
Is he from the south? Is he from the south of Italy?
I think so.
Like
I
the
don't.
toe and the heel of the boot? Well, I'll let you know that my family's from the toe of the boot of
Love
Italy.
it. Love it. Ariana has a cool family. They all have cool families, but it's neat because they do a lot of cooking from a lot of different countries and Peruvian and Italian and French and really cool, lots of recipes.
That's awesome.
I love it. I love it. Well, friends, I think that brings us to the end. Anyone else have any questions or anything else we want to add? Valdine, always questions. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, it was very interesting. My husband's not home. He's my cook, my chef, my everything. But I love the best of bridge and I love how you talked about not stressing over things. So
Mm.
maybe I'll dabble my feet in a little bit more. But Meg always talks about how awesome the kids are in her classes. And your questions today were absolutely phenomenal. I'm really excited to try some of the cookbooks that some of you might be making or hanging out in some of your restaurants. So it was great to be a part of it today and to get to meet somebody as legendary as I because we all want to go to the Fairmont in November and everybody does Best of Bridge and Canadian Living. So a legend. So
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
I'm like goosebumps. The hair's standing on my arm. Thank
oh.
you. I'm gonna get all choked up now. I better stop talking.
I know. I
Um,
get I get I get a little choked up too. This is just really really special. I want to say thank you to you, Emily. I really I look up to you in the food world because I started my professional food world career 5 years ago. Not a whole lot before that. And I know you've been doing this for a long time and you make everything look easy. I want everyone here in this room to know just how approachable Emily is. So you see someone who's written cookbooks and been on TV and really has been in this business for a very long time, and which is weird because she's only 30. But how is it possible to do all that you have done but remain so Canadian and so cool and so approachable? And it just really means a lot. It means an awful lot for you to give your time tonight, not only just to sit and chat, which is what all we asked was for you to sit and chat. She made bread. She made a whole kitchen full of bread for us. So
I wish
thank
you could
you.
all be here because
I
it would be
know.
fabulous to share.
Well, thank you so very much. It really personally means a whole lot. And, to help encourage this next generation to have that kitchen confidence and to get out there and really really make a difference in the food world. Can you see the chat right now, Emily? Do
I
you have
can't. It's too far. I can't see
Callum
it.
says, what? With 100 exclamation marks. She's 30? Yes, Callum, she's 30. But thank you from the bottom of my heart. And on behalf of the Cook with Meg world, I just want to say a huge thank you to you. Helen will make arrangements for you to get your book. I have all of her info, so we'll talk after.
Perfect.
And thanks everyone for coming. You want to wrap it up, Emily?
Yes, I do. I want to thank you, Meg, because without you, this wouldn't have happened. And I want to thank all of you for joining tonight. And I agree. I think you guys are the future. And keep cooking, write things down. I want to see those cookbooks. I want to come to your restaurants. And I want you to, if you do have any questions, just let me know. I'm on Instagram, I'm on the web, Emily Richards Cooks. That's what I do. And that's where you're going to find me.
I love it. I love it. Well, in every Cook with Meg class, we end our classes the exact same way every single time. Ariana, do you want to turn your mic on and explain to the group how we end our classes and why we end our classes this way?
We end our classes this way to remember how awesome we are.
And what do
And
we?
also, just for you know, if your book was published in 2015, I'm 10 years old this year, so I'm as old as your book.
Yay, Ariana!
Awesome.
I love that so much. So we end our class by yelling, "We are awesome." So on the count of three, but before I say that, do you use the same amount of gluten-free flour as ordinary flour in that bread? Helen wants to know.
You tend to use a little bit less. It just depends on the mix of the gluten-free flour. I tend to use a 1-to-1, that cup for cup flour, and it's pretty close.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
you're
everyone.
welcome.
Here we go. Emily, you stick around. I'll say bye to everyone on three, or we are awesome on 3, 2, 1. We
We
are
are
awesome. Bye,
awesome!
everyone.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you so
My
much,
mom
everyone,
eats
for
gluten-free
coming.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
guys.